Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about a secret. Whether you are applying for a job or not, you really need to know about it. And this is called the executive presence, and it's considered a career catalyst, right? It actually helps you move in your career, move forward in your career faster, right? It's called the executive presence. Now, I'll just explain what is meant by the executive presence, right? Now, achieving the executive presence or mastering the executive presence. This is a quote actually that people talk, mention when they talk about the executive presence. They say that, but leadership potential isn't enough to lever or help people move forward, to lever men and women into the executive suite. And if a leadership potential, you have leadership qualities, that doesn't mean that you're going to sit on such a chair for the top man, right? You're not going to sit on that chair because you just have leadership potential. Leadership roles are given to those who also look and act the part. So there are something else than just having a mind, a leadership mind. Okay, there are other things that you have to master to get to the executive presence. And as a matter of fact, I have seen it all through my career. Okay, the ones who reach the top are the ones who have the executive presence, right? The ones who do not have the executive presence skills don't reach the top, even if they are master clinicians, even if they are hard workers, right? They just don't get to the top because they don't have this extra thing which moves them forward. Now, have you ever had a boss who walks into the room and brings with him or her an air of leadership? Somebody's coming in and you say, my God, that looks like a top man or a leader or a top woman, right? And then when they start talking, you know immediately that this person is in charge. But what is it that makes you feel that this man or woman is in charge? Is it something in this boss stride or way of speaking, right? Being a sound leader takes more than simply knowing how to do your job. Okay, this is what I said. You can be a perfect clinician. You must also be able to command the presence of authority and leadership. This is what's called executive presence. So, how to command the presence of authority and leadership? The executive presence. So, how to get it and how to get it? Now, this is Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela was a man that has actually an excellent example of the executive presence. Okay, the executive presence is the shadow of good leadership, right? Without it, you are not a leader. You have to have it to become a good leader. Okay, it's about people's perception of you, right? Executive presence is when you ask somebody and tell them, does this man or woman have the executive presence? They can tell, especially people who know exactly what the executive presence is about, right? Are we perceiving this man or woman as having the executive presence? Okay. Now, it's defined as a set of learned behaviors that enable you to command attention. You know, when you speak, people stop talking and listen. And when you talk, you inspire others. It's called the X factor in business. This is called the X factor in business, right? And without it, your career progress will inevitably slow down, right? Just actually earlier this week, I was speaking to a house officer, and he said that because he was behaving using doing the executive presence exercise, right? Actually, the patients actually saw that he was a senior doctor in the hospital, right? It's just because he was a house officer, but he was actually portraying all the elements of an executive presence, and therefore the patients actually perceived him as being a senior, despite being just a house physician. So a true story. So it just tells you how important the executive presence is about. Now, executive presence is a dynamic mix of three things: gravitas, the way you act. How you act is called gravitas. The way you talk and speak, this is communication. And the way you look, that's appearance. So these are the three components of the executive presence, right? the way you act, the way you talk, and the way you look. You know, how you act is 67% of the executive presence. How you communicate is 28%, and how you appear, you know, the way you address is 5%. But I can tell you the appearance, although it's 5% of the whole, right? It is the first impression that you give to people, you know, the way. So it's also, but doesn't mean that 5% is not important, but it is in importance, it's less than the others, but it is very important as well. Okay. How to act is called gravitas. How to speak is called communication, and how you look is called your appearance. Okay. So what is gravitas? The executive presence. Gravitas. How you act. Now you are looking confident. You are enthusiastic. You are passionate. You are decisive. You are visionary. You're having integrity. You are professional and engaging, and you are time vigilant. You don't come late. Okay. You don't come late. You keep your time. Okay. These are the attributes of the gravitas. Right. Right. Then communication. Now, we know that actually most of communication, or at least 55%, is actually body language. And therefore, people who have the executive presence are very great in this body language issue, right? They know exactly people will actually pay attention. You know, when people with executive presence, when they speak to others, they have eye contact, they don't interrupt, they listen, they're good listeners. They are aware of and they control their body language, okay? They are very, very meticulous in that, okay? And then when they speak calmly. They don't speak fast, okay? And they speak assertively, okay? And you can tell from, this is the same man, but it's actually, you can tell from the way he's dressed. You actually going to rate him differently, right? You know, you can rate this man as being an insecure, indignant, and arrogant because he's, you know, putting his feet apart, right? This one with crossing his arms in front of him is having a closed mind, okay? And this man is menacing, and he's hiding something in his, you know, when people put their hands in the pocket, okay? And this one who puts his hands, you know, on his waist is considered a defensive man, okay? But now you can tell from this, the way he smiles, the way he's holding his arm. This is called the confidence posture. You know, he's holding his hands together, right? And he looks genuine. Okay, he's well shaven. He's putting a necktie. Okay, he's dressed perfectly. You know, this is what an executive presence look like. Even his shoes is different from the others. You know, you can look. These shoes is different from the others. He's wearing a belt. He's actually, his necktie actually goes exactly, you know, matches his shirt and his jacket. Okay. Now, this is what the executive presence is about. Okay. Even if you're a house officer, just dress like this every day, and people will be forced to respect you. As a matter of fact, and you apply for the next job, they will do your job. Okay. And they have, when they communicate, they have a special way of communicating. They don't use how about doing this. They say, I strongly suggest. They don't say, I tend to agree. Tend means that you are not sure. No, but absolutely what I suggest. I think maybe, again, not sure, my strong advice. I agree completely, because maybe we can. No, you don't say, here is my plan. Well, what if? No, I recommend. You see, the way they communicate is different to the normal people. They are very assertive, they are confident, okay? And so it's important that, you know, people in there, to move on with their career, they really have to master the executive presence, right? And then the last part is the appearance. And again, I already mentioned how the appearance is very important, right? And you find somebody wearing, this is a blue shirt, and then the necktie is actually, the color is maybe like green, or, you know, it doesn't just match, right? But you can see a blue shirt with a matching necktie, you know. And unfortunately, I've seen lots of people actually wearing the wrong necktie, doesn't match, right? And the people who are executive, have the executive presence, they dress well. They don't come to work, you know, they come to work as if they're coming to a party. Not in a sense that they are actually putting jewelries and, no, but they are dressed well, okay? They have a dress code, Okay, they are groomed. بيسرحوا شعرهم إذا عنده digging, his beard is actually done the right way. They are groomed. Okay, they are body odor vigilant. They don't come up with smelling of sweat. In our country, it's very hot and people sweat a lot, and you don't want to, you don't want even your consultant to smell like, sweat. Okay, and executive presence necessity that people are very odor vigilant. And believe it or not, if you go for an interview and you smell of sweat, right, they will not give you a job. I'll tell you, even if you are a master, right, because you are not actually don't have the executive presence. They are useful and vigorous. They are composed. Okay, they don't. When they smile well. They smile politely. When they laugh. They don't laugh with a very loud sound, right? And even when they walk in a gentle and hurried way. They are confident and walk gently and unhurried. Okay. Now, this is a quote from Harvard Medical School. They say that people assess your competence and trustworthiness in a quarter of a second, based solely on how you look. And this is what I'm saying about that. Although it's 5% of the executive presence, it's the first impression that people get out of you, right? And that's why they are professionally dressed, right? Unfortunately, this code of conduct in dressing up in healthcare in Sudan is not at all respected. And you see lots of healthcare providers coming to work not well dressed up, right? Or not well shaven, or maybe smelling of sweat. Okay, these are part of the executive presence. They have to be done in the appropriate way. So another quote: we cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. Okay, so we really have to time for applying the executive presence, right? So practice the executive presence, apply them in everyday life, right? The way you are perceived by others. So you give yourself a brand. Okay, and it's the end of my third talk. And I thank you. And I will stop the recording now, please.